Hi, I'm Bruce from Fast Bikes and I'm here with Paul from Black and White Bikes, who's going to show us how to figure out how worn and usable your chain and sprockets are, and also step by step how you can go about changing yours. So Paul, I'll let you get cracking. Where are we going to start?
Right, we're going to have a little inspection of the chain sprockets and then start with taking bits off and replacing them with all nice new shiny stuff. We've got to have a little look at this chain and see whether it's in dire need of replacement. But we would check to see the chain coming off the back of the sprocket. We check for side-to-side movement and any general tight spots. You can see if a chain is tighter in certain areas, and that gives the game away that you've got some problems. There is a little bit of a tight spot on that, so we're going to chuck this one away and give it something a bit nicer. So all we have to do, we need to remove the gear shift rod out of the way, and then the gun goes on, and then if I just hold the wheel just to make sure, okay. And that's all we need to do. But obviously doing that without a chain in place is impossible. Yeah. So we get that front sprocket nut off first. Next job will be to remove the chain itself. Take that one out because that's, yeah, we'll do that one. Next stage is to use the angle grinder, and we're going to, in order to remove the chain as easily as we can, we're going to take one head off and then we can drive out the centre shaft of the chain. Cool, away you go. Doesn't need much, just to make it easier to drive that pin out. That's all we're done. And now, using the whale tool as a removing device, we put that over there. We're going to get a hammer now. And that's the pin flying out. Now that chain will just fall off, like that. The next two things, we can change the front sprocket and we can change the rear sprocket. Now we've got the chain off. Yeah, if you want to do the front sprocket, that should now just pull off. We could take some time out now to clean. The front sprocket area always gets completely filthy. Now that's a replaceable unit. Yeah, that would be worth cleaning that off. Next job, in order to change the rear sprocket, we need this wheel out, but we've just chocked underneath it so it's not going to drop. So we've got a breaker bar on the other side here. And then we'll see if this just comes out. So that, it's a nice easy job. Just take this side, we've got a brake caliper in the way, we just keep an eye on that. Just putting the caliper just safe the other side there, and now that should just roll out quite happily. And that's our wheel out. So now we're just going to take the rear sprocket off. So we just need to loosen off the 6 sprocket nuts. We're leaving it on the wheel just so that with your hand you can just get some grip. Otherwise, if you take it out of the wheel and just doing it on sprocket carrier, it can be a bit tricky, but just be careful that it doesn't jump out of the cush drive. Now they're loose, they'll just spin off, and it's a simple case of taking that sprocket off, but just popping it back on and then doing it up. We want to make sure that that's all clean and tidy. Anything that will dislodge that will make the sprocket sit uneven. Pop that sprocket on, a little bit of Loctite on each one, multi-purpose Loctite, 243 I think it is, the general one that most people use for most instances. There are different Loctites for different jobs. Make sure you use the right type. All right, so with torque setting, 38 Newton meters, we're just going to check those. Do them crossways. You just crossways just to make sure that you mount the sprocket evenly across the loading. Your service manual will show this, which nuts, bolts to do up in which order. Clean off any excess Loctite, and that's our job done, our nice new rear sprocket. So, back over to the bike. So putting the rear wheel back in the bike without a chain makes it a little bit easier. Depending on the bike, you could have all kinds of scenarios. It's just getting your brake caliper guide sorted. That's normally the bit that is the biggest issue. Having those little blocks of wood underneath just maintains it at the level that we need it to be maintained at, to hopefully keep it right. And the spindle, which was recently greased actually, so that should go straight in. Always tricky to get these things to line up nicely. And we can then just leave that loose. Now is probably a good time to set the chain adjusters all the way back in. So we're going to loosen off the lock nuts. And what we're going to do, the reason for this is we need to get the chain on. It's going to be tight and it's going to be difficult to do it if the wheel is recessed all the way back. So we're going to pull this wheel, or allow the wheel to come to its furthest fore position. So he's just loosening off or tightening those into the adjusters so that the back wheel can come forward as far as possible. All right, that's it. We'll also need the sprocket and the sprocket guide on first as well before we put the chain on. So all nice, lovely and clean, look at that. So just cleaned all that muck off, and that's going to go back. That pops in, then the new front sprocket. With that just finger tight, nothing needs to, the only thing that we tightened up properly at the moment are the sprocket nuts, the rear sprocket nuts. So here's our new chain, which we've specified to hopefully the right length. Now this is a tricky little job that needs to be fed through. So he's just working this through. And then it's got to be guided between the swing arm pivot around the back, get your fingers in there. And then this is, of course, this has got a swing arm that it's got to go through as well. With the wheel all the way forward, it's quite an easy job to line these two up. Actually, it looks like we might be over. So we might think about reducing the size of this chain. So we're going to replace this link with the rivet link. So with that pin ground down, it's now an easy job to put the whale tool in place and just knock that rest of that pin through. You know, so adding extra links in by the use of extra rivet links is probably not a good idea. All right, so hopefully we got that right. So what we're doing now is we're just greasing this soft link, this rivet link, which is the hollow, this is the hollow pin type. We're going to use a different tool to install this, but first of all we just need to put all the O-rings in place, grease them all up. So with that nice and tight, I've got that, and push that tight up against there. Now that chain will hold in place, we can now look at putting more grease in there. This grease comes with the chain, presumably the same grease that they've used to construct the whole chain with. So we're just pushing the plate onto the pins, and then what he's going to do, hopefully, is then check that the width of those plates is the same as the width that the manufacturer has done them to. You do need to measure reasonably accurately, take your time, absolutely, and get that plate absolutely in the right place. So it's the same, so the thickness of the chain at that point is the same as the thickness of the chain at every other point. Yeah. This is a chain tool, okay, fairly basic chain tool, but this has got a ball that is now opening up the end of the rivet link. So what we've got to do, the tool is round. The tool has got a ball in it, basically, is half a ball. And that ball pushes into that hollow and flares that hollow out. And you don't have to go very far. It's not taking any load, it's not taking anything, it's just flaring it enough for this plate not to want to fall off. So that's the chain installed. What we can do now is put the front sprocket nut in place. So we'll do that, we'll torque that up. So again, the bike is not in gear. We're not going to put any stresses through the gearbox. We're going to hold on, or I'm going to hold on to the rear wheel. Yep. So all the stress involved in doing that up was taken up with the chain and my hand on the rear wheel, not the gearbox. You can do it with a rear brake, I just haven't, it's not connected at the moment. So we're just tapping the safety locks, I suppose you call them, back into place. And this, it's another form of Loctite or locking nut. It just locks that nut into place, that's all. Obviously, what you wouldn't want is for your front sprocket to loosen off, the nut to loosen off and the front sprocket to come off. So those Yamaha ones, they're all right. Once that's tapped into place, that's not going anywhere. So now that's pretty much the chain sprockets all installed. We just need to set the tension and then lock it all up. So there you go. We can now pull it back on the chain adjusters. When we're doing a big change like this, we don't rely that heavily on the chain adjusters marks on the swing arm. Okay, they're getting better. They can be okay for a road bike. I want this bike to be pretty accurate. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out a bit of a special tool now and set the bike up using that tool over there. So when he's ready and we've got it there or thereabouts, we'll just pause and we'll set up the next bit. Right, so that's how we install that. And if you just lift the back wheel up so it stabilizes and then just drop it down gently, put the front wheel straight. That's not far out, but we'll measure it. That's looking good. That's within about 0.5 millimetre. That means that back wheel is in line. So now I'm happy for that wheel to be done up. Do those lock nuts up, make sure nothing's going to move. Let's remove the bar first. Okay, so all we've got to do now is torque this rear wheel up. But what can happen is, especially with this side, what's happening is the chain tension is pulling, see, is pulling this side of the wheel into the bike. But there is slack, see, I can still move, even with the chain tension set right. So there's a danger, if you're not careful, of doing the wheel up with this side not hard up against the chain block adjuster. Okay, so what we want to do is make sure that is hard up against there. Now some people, you can just push it with your knee, but it's still moving on the paddock stand and everything. So what I normally do is get just a bar, pop it in there, in one of the grooves of the rear sprocket, and push. So now I can get the torque wrench, putting some pressure on there, holding that wheel forwards, and then just bringing it out, and that's it. So now we've got probably a little bit too much slack there for the minute, but we know that the wheel's straight. We've got the marks here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's right on its 9th mark there. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's slightly further back this side than that side, but it's very close. So you'd be fairly happy using the manufacturer's markings to get the wheel alignment close enough for most people to be, you know, certainly an MOT pass. So yeah, that's about it.
So that's this chain and sprocket fitted. Some great advice and techniques there from the guys at Black and White Bikes. We've got loads more stuff coming your way, so make sure to check out the magazine, fastbikesmag.com, and the YouTube channel for more great content.